Welcome to A Brief History of Conspiracy.
This week, 9/11, follow the money.
This is just a massive bank job. No, seriously.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking billions.
That's exactly what it was. And the destruction of the Twin Towers and the loss of life is a distraction from the money that was stolen.
Yeah. So if you are new to our channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, leave a comment. It really does help us out.
Thanks.
So, on 9/11, this investigation was hampered slightly. In the Pentagon, which is the episode we just did, if you go back and have a look at that, the aircraft hit Wedge 1.
Yes.
And it struck the...
accounts and bookkeeping section of the Pentagon, which was the section of the Pentagon responsible for looking into the 2.3 trillion hole in their budget.
Yeah. This team, the building had just been, that section of the building had just been renovated, and they'd only just moved back in. If this attack had happened, I think it's about 8 weeks earlier, nobody would have died because nobody would have been there. Maybe the painter would have died.
Or if it happened eight weeks afterwards, it probably would have killed three times more than they were killed because it would have been fully staffed.
It just took out the people basically doing this investigation. Now, they argue afterwards that it didn't really stop the investigation, but it definitely hampered it. If you actually look into what they're saying, though, what it basically did was actually made looking into 1.2 trillion completely impossible.
Yep.
Because the records for that were completely gone, and they've kind of been able to piece other things together.
The other 1.1 trillion together, kind of, ish. They get it down to about 600,000, supposedly, at one point, but half of it was pretty dodgy.
Yeah, well, they got it down to about 600 billion.
Oh, sorry, 600,000, not 600,000,
yeah, they got it down to 600,000, they wouldn't even be
happy
with that. That's like,
they'd be very happy with that.
That's like the cost of a hammer, isn't it? That's what these people
that's what they invoice for a hammer, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, they got it down to about 600 billion, but then somebody else came in and investigated and went, where'd you get those numbers from? And they went, we don't know. we just found them. So the number went straight back up again to a lot of it. They basically fudged or faked a load of documents. That's the thing is, they faked a load of documents. It just amazes me that they can spend money on this on the defence budget and have no idea what they're spent on.
You'd think also the American public would be in uproar at the amount of their taxpayers' dollars that were just disappearing into something that can't be explained.
They don't seem to care.
I just can't understand how they don't want to know.
So, after September 11th, they hired a new Undersecretary of Defence. And his main job was to find this 2.3 trillion and to figure out and hopefully to stop it ever happening again.
Well, since they destroyed the accounts and bookkeeping section of the Pentagon, though, they did have a backup.
Yeah.
And the backup was located in WTC 7.
Yeah.
The part of the Pentagon that had the original, and they destroyed the part of the World Trade Center complex that had the backup.
Yeah.
So they really couldn't find most of this 2.3 trillion.
But like I say, I think it was like 1.2 trillion. Even they admitted we don't know, we can't do anything with 1.2, and then they fudged another 2 trillion, and then that all went out. But like I said, we said this is a problem that's still going on. It's now 20 trillion. You should really be asking your senator where this money is going, because it's going somewhere. Just to put into thing of how much 2.3 trillion is, our entire debt as a country right now today is only around £1 trillion. So that would be $1.8 trillion. The deficit in America right now is about $1 trillion. Your debt
Didn't the American deficit at some point get up to about 15 trillion though?
Not the debt did, but the deficit. So how much money they actually don't spend. So the difference between how much money they earn and how much money they spend.
Yes.
Ours is about $1 billion. America's is, well, ours was about $1 billion. It's much lower than that now. But America's is about $1 trillion, and the national debt is, I believe it's somewhere about it's in the 20 trillion area.
The national debt in America at one point was 15.
I think it's higher than that now.
But now it's higher than that, I think. Yeah.
If they knew where this money was, in theory, if this money was sat somewhere. I don't think it is. It's been spent. They just don't know what they spent it on. But if they knew what they'd actually and been more efficient, your national debt would be much, much lower. Right. So, the Undersecretary of Defence in 2001, Dov Zakheem, interesting fella.
Oh yeah, incredibly interesting fella.
So let's have a talk about his history a little bit. From 1984 to 2001, he was a CAO of System Planning Corporation.
International, which dealt with the
Yeah.
remote control of systems for airplanes.
Well, they did all
termination
sorts.
systems in case the remote control systems fail.
Exactly, yeah. They were actually DARPA's biggest contractor for
Okay,
pretty much
that
the
makes
entire
sense.
period.
That makes sense.
And they had just sold this remote control system for planes or for aircraft. So I was wondering if there's somebody that was in the heart of this, that was sort of a bit of a puppet master, a bit of a, you know, if there was a mastermind for this.
Mhm.
This Dov Zakheim is probably...
He does fit the bill, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Mm.
He was then, during the 2000 election, Bush Jr.'s foreign policy advisor. He was part of a group they called the Vulcans. I think they were Trekkies.
No,
Not possibly.
probably not.
It probably means something else. Probably means something very clever that I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't think they're into Star Trek, to be honest.
But one of the other Vulcans was Condoleezza Rice. And she's also...
She was the one that sat down with the Taliban and negotiated the oil deals, wasn't it?
Yeah,
With
exactly.
the pipelines.
So she's an interesting person as well.
Mm.
So this Dov Zakheim was involved in a tech company, very strongly involved with a technical company, which was involved in DARPA, which designed technology that potentially could have been used
On September the 11th,
on
2001.
September 11th.
Very much so.
I mean, if you're talking about moving these chess pieces around, Dov Zakheim seemed to be very much involved. And
Well,
then he
there's-
got a promotion.
Oh, well, he was sworn in as well. There's some other interesting things about him as well. He was one of the authors of the PNAC document, the Project for the New
Yep.
American Century. He was also sworn in as the Pentagon Comptroller, which was the man in charge of the accounts and bookkeeping section of the Pentagon in May 2001, prior to it being impacted by the plane on September the 11th, 2001.
Exactly.
So he was in charge of the investigation into the missing $2.1 trillion.
He was really in charge of trying to fix this problem for then a few years after, and never got anywhere, shockingly.
Well,
Well, they said they did, and they do. So let's talk about the New American Century, right? And this white paper called Rebuilding America's Defences. It was written in 1997.
yes.
A few interesting people were involved in this New American Century, including Donald Rumsfeld himself.
Yep.
This white paper, what was it? What was the nub?
The nub of the white. Well, it was the it was a project for the New American Century. How does America maintain its world dominance into the
For the next 100 years.
for the next 100 years into the 21st century?
And Donald Rumsfeld's big plan based from this was this $50 billion worth of investment.
Into the military. Yeah.
They argued in this white paper, though, that they would never get public support for that. That was actually argued in the paper written in 1997. And they said, the one thing, and Donald Rumsfeld has actually been quoted as saying this before September 11th as well, that to get this public support behind this, we needed...
Some kind of catalysing event, like a new Pearl Harbor.
Which is a lovely way of putting it.
That's an exact
That is
quote from the document.
Yeah, that is in the document. So, what we have to ask is, when they released this paper, was a plan hatched?
I think the plan might go back further than the document. I think the document was almost them going, this is what we're about to do.
Yeah, well, it took them 4 years after this to actually implement. So I almost think like a...
It could have been. It
This
could
could
have
have
been
been
the
floating
early
the
planning
idea
stages.
out.
Yeah.
Almost like a, have a look at this. What do you think? And the
Yeah.
people that then come back and go, well, yeah, they're maybe the ones that you then have a quiet word with around the corner and go, well, you know what, actually, something could happen. Mr. Silverstein, would you like to buy a building and make a lot of money? And, you know, this is maybe how these things started to just floating the idea out there, you know? But this idea of a new Pearl Harbor event...
And it's not like
It's
America's
chilling, you know?
history's, never had any false flag operations in it before.
No.
Not that we might have covered in another episode that their history's littered with them.
Please go back and look at our false flag episode, because I don't care what you say, September 11th was either planned or completely taken advantage of by the American government.
Yeah.
They either planned it and executed it, or when it happened, they went, right, we're taking advantage of this, and they took full advantage. You know,
I'd argue it was a combination of maybe a bit of both, probably.
yeah.
But yeah, it's...
I actually don't think Dov Zakheim was particularly happy with the American government, though, after this. He then wrote a book several years later, and he basically argued that the Afghanistan and Iraq war were completely mismanaged and they did not take advantage of the situation well enough. It smacks as me as a man that had a plan.
That had a plan and they didn't follow it.
And they didn't follow it through. And then was angry.
Angry because he had a better plan. But that's why I find it also very interesting when Bush comes out on the television and said, well, we didn't imagine people flying planes into buildings.
Yeah.
But you
We
did,
never
because
planned for that.
you planned it 50 years ago.
You were
The
actually
American
running-
government were planning an operation to do exactly that and blame it on the Cubans 50 years ago. If you couldn't see that could be done again today, you shouldn't be running a country.
And it's not true anyway, because simulations were being run that very day out of NORAD.
So why would Bush say that? Unless it's to try and hide behind this negligence.
It's a double bluff, isn't it?
It's hiding behind negligence when actually you're complicit.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've argued the whole way, that we know they were either involved or completely negligent, because we know between them, the FBI and the CIA knew pretty much the whole plan. They knew the terrorists were getting flight simulations and things. They knew about a lot of the money that was being moved around. They knew. And that is not conspiracy theory, that is fact.
And then we haven't even touched on the Able Danger terrorist tracking program that identified Mohammed Atta as the ringleader as early as May 2000.
Yeah, but
And
that
the
technology
American
was
government
illegal.
Destroyed over 10 terabytes of data that the Able Danger terrorist tracking program had identified.
Right. You should be more
Potential
afraid of that,
terrorists.
though, because the Able Danger tracking system, the reason why they destroyed that technology was because the technology was illegal. They were taking information illegally.
Which I do get, and that isn't...
It was illegal before September 11. It's not illegal now.
No.
So
That's what the NSA is now doing, isn't it, in America?
don't write anything in your emails that says anything about anything
that you don't want anybody else to read.
Because because if it sets off flags, I guarantee we are now on an NSA watch list.
Well, no, we'll be on GCHQs probably, but
I know we'll be on both because they've got that
probably the NSA,
agreement.
because they probably share information.
They've got this triple tick sharing system that it's us, Canada, South Africa, and Australia randomly have this agreement, and America's kicking off us at the moment because we want to have Huawei, the telephone people involved in our 5G, and because of that, America are going, well, I'm not sure we can continue to share information with you the same way, but we have an intelligence agreement with those. I just find it random that we share so much information with Australia.
There's not many people, to be fair, it's all the it's another English speaking. It's another it's another country that the whites have invaded and occupied.
Also, Canada. How amazing is Canada's spy network? I mean, can you tell us your secrets, eh? You know that's not really going to work, is it? The most polite
Probably
people.
not.
Excuse me, eh? Can I have a look in your briefcase, please, eh? It's not going to work, is it? They're too polite. Can you imagine James Bond if he was Canadian? It just wouldn't work.
Anyway, it's not really worth sharing information with the Americans because we end up with a deficit.
There's also another amazing piece of when I was doing this research. I remember the Enron scandal. That they basically came out and said that they'd made 111 billion worth of profits, and then it very quickly came out and went, no, you didn't. And they had they invented this way of sort of doing their accounting, and it was completely illegal, and they were overinflating their profits so they could increase their stock market price and then, in theory, make the profits they pretended that they were making. So, at the time of the Enron scandal, Thomas White was the CEO. He then went on to become Secretary of the Army. So he was CEO of a company that had committed one of the biggest crimes
accounting frauds
ever
in the history, in recorded history.
Yeah. And he was then somehow made Secretary of the Army in a time when the Army and Navy were trying to figure out how a massive, which any other company would be fraud. How they were trying to figure out how they'd lost 2.3 trillion. How did that guy get that job? What was that job interview like? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, have you got any history in fraud?
You know that thing you did at Enron? Yeah.
Can you do it again,
Can you do it again, please?
Yeah. We want to dial that shit up to 12, though.
Yeah.
Crack on.
Enron was a 3, you know.
Yeah, we
want a 12 out of this.
Let's push that up, you know. You with Enron, you had a good try. Now you're in the major leagues, boy. You know, it's
But
like
I'm guessing what you're
ridiculous.
getting to here is the fact that all of the evidence for the ongoing Enron investigation was stored in a building.
Yeah.
Particular building.
Yeah, it was the 7th building, in fact.
Of a World Trade Center complex
Yeah.
that was destroyed on September the 11th, 2001.
The investigation into the 2.3 trillion was definitely hampered by this attack. The investigation into the Enron stopped.
No, but it's almost like he was given that new job position,
Yeah,
and he
right.
went, "I'll do it, but you've got to put all the
Do us-
Enron
do
investigation
us a
stuff in
favour."
Building 7."
So again, that's the thing.
That is so how that went down. That
Yeah.
Do you not think? Honest, that is how that
I
went
actually
down.
don't think that is that way. I will help you out the 2.3 trillion, but you've got to help me out. A bit of you rub my back, I'll rub yours.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'll rub your back, you destroy a building for me. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Actually, we want to destroy that building anyway, so that's nice. That's
We had to tear it down in 5 years anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. There were so many people in America that were secretly on September 12th will go in either phew, we got away with that, or cha-ching. I just think there's too many things in this whole story that are just like there's
Far too many
there's
coincidences.
too many ducks lined up, isn't there? Do you know what I mean?
There's like 50 plus coincidences that all have to align perfectly.